In this lesson, I'll cover how to save poses in Daz and export animations for use in Marvelous Designer. We'll also take a look at how Aniblocks are used to blend animations. You can do all this in other 3D packages, but because Daz is free to use, I'll be using it for the purposes of this course. Let's get started. First, let's reset the interface so it will be easier to follow along. Select Window, Workspace, select Layout. Choose City Limits Light. Select Content Library. This is where all the Daz assets exist. Expand People and click Genesis 8 Female. Double-click the icon to load the model into the viewport. You can rotate the camera with Ctrl-Alt-Left-click. Roll the mouse wheel to zoom in and out. Ctrl-Alt-Right-click to move. And Ctrl-F to focus on the selection. Under Tools, there are a number of manipulators. Here's Rotate, Translate, and Scale. Select Universal. This is the tool we want to work with as it offers the most control, allowing you to rotate, translate, and scale all in the same tool. With no selection, the first click on the model selects the character root. Click Scene to see the character root highlighted. The second click will select the targeted joint. Now delete this model and load a new Genesis 8 Female. Let's start posing her. To start, we want to export this as the arms up or base pose. Select the model and go to File, Save As, Pose Preset. The window will open to the default pose library directory. Save your scene with a descriptive name. The default options are fine. If you look at the Poses folder under My Library, you can see that our newly saved pose shows up there. For the next pose, we need to rotate the arms down. We want to rotate to very specific degrees. To do this, we need to enable Snap Rotate. Click Window, Panes, and Tool Settings. Expand the menu. Click Rotate. Now you can see the rotation snapping to 15 degrees. We want a smaller rotate snap. Change the setting to 5. Now starting from the neutral pose, rotate both shoulders down 5 degrees. Next, rotate the arms down 20 degrees. We can close the Tool Settings menu now. Save this pose preset as Arms Down. Next, rotate the lower arms forward 25 degrees. Save this as Elbow Bend. You can double-click the poses to set them now. Click the Arms Up pose to return it to the neutral pose. Bend both lower legs back 30 degrees. Save this as Legs Bend. Click the tab to bring up the timeline. Right-click on empty space and enable Studio Keys if it's not already showing. We want to create all of our animations with an in and out pose. This is done so that once an animation has run its course, the end pose is the same as the beginning. This will allow you to get back to your starting pose from any intermediate poses. Slide the notch to number 2. This will give us 60 frames in total to loop our animation. Go to frame 0 and double-click to assign the arms up pose. Move the time slider to 1 and set the arms down pose. Next, move the time slider to 2 and set the arms up pose again. When you set a pose like this, Daz will automatically set a keyframe when you apply the pose. Before we can export, right-click in empty space and click Bake to Studio Keyframes. This bakes the animation to the timeline. Select the character and export. Name the file arms up, down, up, and click Save. Show individual settings, and toggle the settings as shown. Click Save and enter Marvelous Designer as the preset name. For the next animation, we want to export arms down to elbow bend to arms down. Set these poses the same way as before at 0, 1, and 2. Now export again and name the file arms down, elbow bend. Select the preset we previously saved and click Accept. Another way to clear the timeline is to simply delete the model and load it again. The third pose we need to export is knees bend. Apply the poses and export like before. Name this legs bend. Great, now we're done exporting our poses for Marvelous Designer. Now I want to show you how you can convert your animations to Aniblocks. Aniblocks will let you blend animations together. The reason this is useful is because if we want to run a walk cycle in Marvelous Designer, we'll need to start at our base pose and blend into a walk start pose. All you need is to have an animation on the timeline to convert from. Since we already have animation, I'll right-click in empty space and click Create Aniblock from Studio Keyframe. The default settings are fine. When I right-click, you can see my Save As New is grayed out. The downside is, Animate is a plugin for Daz that costs money, and Daz only gives you 30 days free trial for it. If your installation is due, you may still be able to save this as an Aniblock. Otherwise, you can only work with it in this instance. This is fine, as it doesn't affect our project. I merely wanted to show you how this is done. You can see your animation was converted into an Aniblock. If you have a walk cycle, you can drag this onto the timeline after our unnamed block. In this case, I'll drop double touch and point. Now you can see the two animations blending. If you wanted to export this awesome animation for Marvelous Designer, first you need to bake to Studio Keyframes. Then export like before. Good, we're done with that example. Next I want to show you a similar example, but this time we'll blend a static pose to a walk cycle. Delete the model and reload it. Assign the arms up pose at 0 and 1. Right-click to create Aniblock. Now we have an Aniblock with nothing on it but a static pose. Navigate to walks, then drag and drop the forward cycle animation onto the timeline. Move the time slider and you can see how Daz blends the static pose into the walk cycle. This is used in Marvelous Designer to transition from your garment modeling pose into a walk animation. Move the Aniblocks further out, then click on the first block and you can see the range that the animation blends. Finally, once you're happy with your animation, right-click and Bake to Studio Keyframes. Once the keys are baked, the Aniblocks can be deleted and the animation remains. Export and name this animation something descriptive. If it doesn't all make sense right now, don't worry, it will later. Next, we'll bring these animations into Marvelous Designer and build our garments. This concludes the Daz portion of the lesson. Good job.